Now, in this past hour, we brought you to the breaking news that the government has sensationally yet quietly dropped its plans for 5 local inquiries into rape gangs, announcing that the £5 million fund will instead now go to locally led work, following feedback from local authorities. Well, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, made a statement in the House of Commons a little earlier today.
Secretary's statement to the House in January, she also set out what we are doing to crack down on grooming gangs, and today I can provide an update. Baroness Casey's 3-month national audit on group-based child sexual exploitation and abuse is ongoing. It is building a comprehensive national picture of what is known about child sexual exploitation, identifying local and national trends, assessing the quality of the data, looking at ethnicity issues faced, for example, by cases involving Pakistani heritage gangs, and reviewing police and wider agency understanding. We are developing a new best practice framework to support local authorities which want to undertake victim-centred local inquiries or related work. Drawing on the lessons from local independent inquiries like Telford, Rotherham and Greater Manchester, we will publish the details next month. Alongside this, we will set out the process through which local authorities can access the £5 million national fund to support locally led work on grooming gangs. Following feedback from local authorities, the fund will adopt a flexible approach to support both full independent local inquiries and more bespoke work, including local victims panels or locally led audits into the handling of historic cases.
Well, quite the announcement. And let's get the latest now with GBNews' national reporter, Charlie Peters, the reporter who has done more to shine on this, light on this topic than perhaps anybody. Charlie, this is an astonishing announcement coming very late on the day on the final hour of this political term. Tell us more.
Yeah, Martin, the reactions I've been getting in the last hour have been coming thick and fast. Many survivors reacting in shock. And I should stress also that I understand that Tom Crowther KC, the man appointed by Oldham Council to do their local inquiry, did meet with officials from that council this afternoon. And it's important to stress that because the government announced on January the 16th that the Home Secretary, Yvette Cooper, said that they would support 5 new local inquiries into the grooming, abuse and rape gangs. Only one was confirmed at that time. That was Oldham, because the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, we revealed that she'd responded to Oldham demanding a government inquiry, supporting instead a local inquiry. So that was confirmed before this further government furore erupted. But they said there would be 5. They said there would be 4 other areas. We expected that those 4 other areas would be announced before Easter. Many grooming gang survivors speaking to me across the country in some of the many 50 different towns and cities where we've uncovered or reported on a pattern of abuse of this kind, they said they felt as though they were playing a grooming gangs inquiry lottery, that they hoped that their town would be one of the 4 picked. But this afternoon, the Safeguarding Minister, Jess Phillips, instead said that those 5 inquiries would now become an opt-in measure for instead locally led work. So that could include opportunities for survivors to gather, for sort of truth panels, for victim panels, but it does not necessarily mean that those 5 inquiries will go ahead. The only one, Martin, that I'm confident will go ahead now is Oldham. 3 months on, we still have not had any other inquiries announced. And Jess Phillips said that comes after interacting with local authorities and taking on their feedback. And this comes to the criticism that has been made of this local inquiries point, Martin. Why would a local area want to investigate itself? So many other towns have said they don't want to become another Rotherham, another Rochdale. Now, the Shadow Home Office Minister, Katie Lamb, responded to Jess Phillips' announcement in Parliament earlier today.
Home Secretary said the government would conduct 5 local inquiries into the rape gangs which have terrorised so many innocent children. Over 3 months since the government announced these local inquiries, Tom Crowther KC, a barrister invited by the Home Office to help establish them, knows almost nothing about their progress, and neither do we. Why is the framework for local inquiries now being led by ministers rather than by independent voices such as Tom Crowther? Why is the £5 million set aside for inquiries no longer being allocated but instead delivered on an opt-in basis? And what does the government intend to do about local leaders who say there is no need for an independent inquiry, like in Bradford or in Wales?
Bradford's key there, Martin, because the Tory MP Robbie Moore has been campaigning in that area, in the Bradford district, for a Rotherham-style inquiry, in effect another locally led inquiry, the kind that Labour said in January they'd support. But for many years that's been rejected. It's the sort of area that won't be, I expect, calling for that sort of opt-in inquiry method. I just want to get some of the reaction I've heard from survivors in the last hour for you, Martin. This comes from Elizabeth in Rotherham, a town that has had an inquiry. She's always told me that they've got truth but not justice, because that wasn't statutory. They couldn't compel witnesses. They couldn't hold people to account. She said that once again, we don't matter. We didn't matter as children, and now we don't as adults. What concerns me is without identifying the issues, what will happen to today's children? She said, it's no surprise that the 5 inquiries have now become locally led work, because it was an immediate jerk reaction because of the public backlash following Elon Musk and GBNews raising the subject. I've also heard from some survivors in Oldham who are reassured that their inquiry is still going on, because it was agreed before the Home Office made this announcement of 5 further areas. But for survivors in those towns where there has not been a local inquiry, where they did not get a confirmation, there is now going to be, I expect, a great sense of dread that they are instead going to be asking for some of that locally led work. There is some good news to bring from this announcement as well, Martin, regardless of which political party those MPs belong to, reacting to it and indeed delivering it, which is that the Child Sexual Exploitation Task Force, which was launched in April 2023 on the back of a GBNews investigation, it has arrested 597 people in the 9 months to the end of 2024. So, as Jess Phillips said in the House this afternoon, in other words, it surpassed in that 9-month period what it had achieved in its first full year of operation. Officials working in child sexual exploitation and abuse have told me that the task force has been a real success. I've also heard from Suella Braverman in the last hour, who was the minister who was involved in launching that task force at the time under the Rishi Sunak administration, saying that to see that some 600 arrests have been made in the last 9 months shows that these vile gangs have no place to hide. She says, you will be caught. And that's very much the message I've heard, particularly from those working with the National Crime Agency who were heading up that task force at the time, as it's funded from the Home Office. But Martin, really an extraordinary moment this afternoon. This announcement being made, as I understand, with just 45 minutes notice before it was delivered by Jess Phillips. We were also told that Baroness Casey's 3-month national audit on group-based abuse is expected to come in a month or so. It's ongoing. It was meant to come back this month, but its terms of reference were only published around 6 weeks ago. And the government also announced a new authority, the Child Protection Authority, to prioritise the protection of children and, they said, improve the national oversight and consistency of child protection practice. But for those local areas who thought perhaps that there might be more inquiries, it seems that instead of 5, Martin, there will just be Oldham.
Charlie Peters, a comprehensive and emotional update. Thank you very, very much. As you so eloquently put it, a lottery for an inquiry where 4 towns have just cruelly been announced as losers. Charlie Peters, thank you very, very much for joining us and giving us that full update. Chris Sober, I must continue this conversation with you here in the studio. That speech by Katie Lamb, Conservative MP, is incredible. I recommend anybody to watch it. She said that the state has failed white girls. She called this institutional rape. Nobody's been prosecuted in Oldham, where the ringleader of the rape gang there, Shabir Ahmed, was employed as a safeguarding officer. He was not investigated internally. Talking about police officers who never faced justice. And Chris, this coming so late in the day in the parliamentary business, it will ask a lot of questions about What motivated this decision? It seems to be entirely against public mood.
Well, we hope that there's no watering down of this apparent determination by Yvette Cooper back in January when Charlie Cooper's work got wider attention on the national stage, that it wasn't being watered down. But it does appear to us that the attempt at dealing with this problem, the difficulty of saying it is Pakistani heritage rape gangs involved. I mean, looking here at the statement here from Jess Phillips, in her statement here, the Home Office has given out, there's no mention of that race element to what's going on here. And that's why
it's the truth.
Even though that's what happened, and we heard it there in the House of Commons saying Pakistani heritage, but it does seem to slightly use words to mitigate what we're talking about here, and that's what I think will be so difficult for people to understand. She says here that we are adopting a whole of government approach built on consultation with victims and survivors, experts, local authorities, police and other stakeholders. It's not the end point at the beginning. She goes on, we'll continue to drive forward reforms to protect more children from abhorrent abuse and support more adult survivors of these traumatic crimes. I just worry that the language we're seeing here, which is the establishment wrapping in kind of just deadening the shocking effect of what Charlie Peterson is reporting, appears to be coming out here from the Home Office. And if so, that will not deal with the problem. Only by tackling it, talking about it, as we try to at GB News, will we get there.
Thank you very much, Chris Owen. Let's now speak with the former Labour Special Advisor, Paul Richards. Paul, thank you for joining us on the show. What's your immediate reaction to a decision that's just taken the breath away of abuse survivors, of campaigners, to snatch away 4 rape gang inquiries when they were promised? Why would the Labour Party do that?
Well, it is a fast-moving story because, as you say, they announced it quite late on, final hours before recess. But I have to say, Parliament is back in a week or so there will be plenty of opportunity to scrutinise this decision. If there was a minister sitting in this seat now, what they would tell you is that the money's going to go to these local activities, including dealing with some of the victims and giving them a platform and listening to their stories and getting justice that way. And more importantly, letting the police get on with the job of investigation and making arrests. And as you've heard in your reports there, there's been 600 arrests recently, and there will be an inquiry in Oldham. So it's not an entirely bleak picture, I think, for the victims. And in some ways, it's quite good news that they will be given the platform that they so richly deserve and their stories will be told.
Well, Paul, I appreciate, as somebody in the red corner, you're trying to put a positive spin on this, but that's not the way it's been received by survivors. One town, 1 out of 50 will get what they want, what the survivors want. 1 out of 50. And why is it, Paul, that still to this day, Jess Phillips' speech seems to shy away from the truth that it was Pakistani Muslim men? What is it? There's this continued dodging of reality here. Why?
I don't agree with that. And if you look at the Louise Casey inquiry, which is ongoing, I mean, if you know Louise, she is an incredibly thorough, tough woman who will take no nonsense. And she has overtly said that where there is this racial element, this Pakistani-led element to this.
Jess Phillips today has been dodging the reality and dressing it up in politic talk. It's like the reality is, as we just heard, the institutional rapes of white working class girls who've been failed by the state. Today they were failed again.
Well, believe me, Louise Casey's report will absolutely take that head on. There'll be no obfuscation at all, no establishment cover-up there. She will absolutely get to the truth because she's somebody who takes absolutely no nonsense. And it's already woven into her terms of reference, and that's what will come out in a few weeks' time. So we'll be back debating that, I'm sure. But I think when you read Louise Casey's report, you will see that we've taken that absolutely head on.
OK, thank you very much for joining us on the show.